of course, the title of this event is Vision to Venture. So maybe it would be a good way to start it by asking, the early stages of your business, having the vision, the idea. How did you guys get going? Because, from my experience as an aspiring entrepreneur and a lot of people in the crowd also, we all have these ideas, right? But acting on it is one of the hardest things to do. So maybe you could share.
I would like to hear how Bonnie started.
Are you assigning me, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my parents raised me to be an employee. So for the first 29 years of my working life, I worked for somebody else. I was with Mobile Oil as a marketing representative. And then I joined the life insurance industry for 23 and a half years. So when I was turning 50 that year, and I was very unhappy. And I wasn't excited anymore to get up in the morning. I wasn't passionate about life. So I said I wouldn't want to live my life like this. So I just decided to quit. I didn't really know what I was going to do at that time, but I knew that I didn't want to continue what I was doing. So anyway, at that time we had small businesses, we had a school, we had playroom. And then Charlie, my son who's here, got us interested into the restaurant business. So he offered us to look at Moon Cafe. Was a sort of a bankrupt company, so we bought it. I remember we bought it for 700,000 pesos at the old place there in Guadalupe. We invested around 3 million to renovate it, and it just sort of flew. We also saw Thirsty Juices and Shakes, which was owned by the family of the late Vice Mayor Renato Osmeña. Remember we also bought it for 700,000 pesos with two outlets, one in SM and one in Ayala. We grew it to about almost 200 outlets before the pandemic. Now we're over 100. So in effect, our entry into the food business really was we bought these businesses and we converted. Over the years, we built capacity, and over the years, we've been able to develop brands like House of Lechon, Mr. Sizzlers, Cafe Racer, and the other brands that we have. Because we learned how to do it, we gained confidence, and we have the people to do it. So now, we're in a position to actually convert very, very quickly ideas of the children that I'm very open to listen to, into reality. So that's how we got into business ourselves. So it's an exciting journey, and my biggest blessing is to be able to work with my children. Ours is a true family business, and it's a first-gen business. So we're not second-gen, we're first-gen. And I think that is really a great honor to be working with my kids. I couldn't thank the Lord for it.
Thank you, Bonnie. So I guess we'll go from left to right. So, Steve?
I think by age.
Yeah. Steve, for you, it's quite interesting, right, Steve? Because, well, from my research, you started before the big ones came in, right? Before Starbucks came in. So I'm a bit curious, really, like, 'cause that's the second wave of coffee, right? The second, having those nice cafes and all that. But it was 1996. So the scene was totally not there, right? Coffee was, I guess, what you had in your house, or what it was more of an instant kind of coffee. So how did you start, Steve?
First of all, thank you for this opportunity, and maayong gabi sa inyong tanan. On the side, Marco, thank you for calling me Steve. Huh? Only Bonnie's Tito. So I was born and raised in Cebu. My parents were in the restaurant business. It used to be called Rick's Barbecue. It was the barbecue place in Cebu. So I was really into business. As a kid, I always wanted to be in business already, but I didn't know what to get into. Until I was in law school, and to keep myself up to study, I drank a lot of coffee. And at that time, it was instant. So that was like the first wave. And when I started traveling, I discovered coffee and the lifestyle of it. And I ended up going to coffee shops. Instead of going to probably a tourist spot, I would go to a coffee shop. And that's because I felt like that's the best way to immerse in a local culture. And one day, when I was about to come home, I just had that light bulb moment. Why not share this opportunity or this experience with my fellow Cebuanos? So in 1994, that happened in 1994, and when I did the study, everything was just not for it. Like, market wasn't ready, people thought people will not drink hot coffee in a hot country. But I think as an entrepreneur, we have that unrelenting spirit to really believe in what we think will work. And so I pursued that. Studied it for 2 years, and when I was finally ready to serve that first perfect cup of coffee, Ayala offered me a space. It's a small kiosk, or a counter, or even a cart, like a small thirsty cart. Yeah. And so I opened in June 28, 1996. And my, the journey, if you thought, if I stayed on if I went with the sales that I had, I would have closed it in 6 months. So my sales would probably be 300 a day, and my rent was 9,000 a month. So I couldn't pay the rent in Ayala. But again, that spirit of entrepreneurship kept me believing in what I thought I saw was going to be a trend in the future. In the 6th month, the rest is history. I opened my second kiosk in SM and grew the business 1 store a year for the first 5 years, just plowing the profit back into business. And then 2 stores every year after that. And on the 10th, 11th year, I opened my first store in Metro Manila. And in 2011, I opened my business to an investor. And in 2016, we had a private equity partner join in to the business, and that's when I moved to Manila to really grow the business. So,
Thank you, Steve. Rhett, you've been here for 11 years?
I think 12.
12 years already?
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, my background though, I'm clearly not from the Philippines. I'm Australian. I'm actually from a farm in Western Australia. It's about double the size of Cebu Island, but there's less than 20 people. So quite different upbringing. And I moved, but I was always kind of drawn into the computer screen. So I've been on computers a lot as a kid. And when I was just got in a little bit of trouble as a kid for certain computer issues. Anyway, got through that. And then, when I was about 22, I started an IT company in Sydney in Australia and built that up. And at some point, I was trying to expand my teams. So like a lot of foreigners, I came to the Philippines to hire people. So I set up an office here and was hiring people, and I kind of, went through my own challenges with the infrastructure and, living here for 3 years initially. I never came here to start a business locally, but I was living here dealing with, all the challenges that everyone deals living with in the Philippines, and I'm not really someone to complain about problems, so I thought maybe I can try to help improve the infrastructure in the country. And so about 8 or 9 years ago, I started Rise with a view to try to improve access to internet for Filipinos, because I think it's basically a human right. It's kind of like clean water or affordable housing, or it's really up there with what every person should have access to. And so I've spent the last 8 or 9 years actually not doing my other companies too much, because I'm more interested in this problem. And it's going well. And basically, along the way, building other systems in the Philippines to help improve the speed of the internet, not just for Rise, but for other telecom companies. And just trying to work on the ecosystem generally to improve infrastructure here. That's me.
Yeah, we'll get into your mind later. I mean, you're going against the giants, coming from a farm with 20 people. So yeah, we're going to talk about that later. Right?
Okay. Just one clarification. I don't see it really as adversarial. I think a lot of the thinking in the Philippines sometimes is like, what I have, you don't have, right? And I think one of the mindsets that can benefit the Philippines is that it's a country that has a huge growth potential, and often more people involved in an industry actually means that it grows bigger. It's not that what I have, you don't have necessarily. But yeah, I don't know if I'm against them. I think Purity or Globe or other companies are actually making more money because of what I did. So I don't actually think it's a zero sum, like I took, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Marken?
Well, yeah, so, I mean, I started with an idea. You know, I had many bad ones, you know, many bad ones. When I was 6 years old, I mean, when I was 8 years old, I told my dad I wanted to build a car company. And I would draw all these little designs of cars, and one was powered by Bicon Catol spray. Okay? I mean, you know what I mean? What's the price per liter for Bicon Catol spray, no? Anyway, as I grew, my ideas got better, right? I started to look at numbers, see where things went, and I got really interested into making bancas. I feel like people could save a lot of gasoline on lighter, more water dynamic craft. Until my uncle said, "Hey, talk to the banca owners." So I went, talked to some banca owners. I was like, "How much is your banca?" "Sir, 12,000 pesos. I was like, "There's no way it's 12,000 pesos. I realized that the banca owners would buy 1 can of epoxy every day and did not account for the total cost of their banca. So I was like, okay, scrap this. No? Into the next. I actually started a coffee business with a cousin of mine called Drip and Draft. And she wanted to do coffee, I wanted to do beer. I was really into craft beer, all that. And I saw that, why isn't there draft beer anywhere in this country? And so I would see San Miguel kegs being chugged in, put into weddings, and beers foaming out, CO2 everywhere, and I was just like, what's going on here? So I had this business with my cousin. I said, I want to do draft beer. So she's like, yeah, go ahead. Here's a wall, put your draft beer stand over there, and it's called a Drip and Draft. All right, cool. So we put this draft beer wall, and I figured out the reason why it was so foamy was line length. Simple line length. They put 2 meters, they put 2 feet of line when there should have been 11 feet of line. Such a simple thing that improved the quality dramatically. I was like, wow, there's going to be, if these are the little things that have made such an awesome product bad, there's a big entry to market here. And then so I said, I'm gonna start. Beer is the hardest food and beverage product in the world. So there was a big learning curve. I said, okay, I'm gonna start with a very small, very nimble product. No, this is our MVP, minimum viable product. I don't know if you guys have read True North or Start with Why. They talk about this a lot. So I started my MVP in my kitchen of my mother's house, and I would make it on the weekends. So I was working for Arcadis during the weekdays, and I was brewing beer in the weekends. Actually, Mike, who's actually here right now, and I started a competition and said, okay, whoever can make the best beer has to buy each other drinks for the rest of the year after work. Anyway, I pursued it. Mike was too busy. And I did not get that, by the way. So tonight, after this, after we finish all my beer, I'm gonna be drinking yours. So I started with the MVP. I had an outlet to sell it in, which is Drip and Draft. I invited friends over to try it out. I got feedback, I collected it, and I said, okay, you know, I think this is time to start something. So I went to my grandparents' place, and I built a brewery, a small little brewery, and I made everything myself. I did, brewing, fermenting, packaging, delivering, line cleaning for 1 year. And I saw all the little inefficiencies and why these things didn't work the way they should. They were simple, yet challenging, issues. So one was cold chain. That was a huge thing it was a realization. And so now we're trying to fix all those. We just opened our bigger brewery, which has times 25 the capacity of our first one. And yeah, I feel like we're producing good beer. We're able to elevate the draft beer market and set a standard. So I'm really proud of that.
Nice. So it seems like all your origin stories, in a business sense, right? There's nothing really sexy or like fascinating about it, like how it started. Because I think there's this idea also, or notion that there's an aha moment, you know, like it's from a movie, like, because of course you're hearing the success stories of other people already, and nobody seems to really have a full appreciation of how it all began. And for you guys, it all sounded very in a simple manner. And with that being said, what do you think was like the strongest value, virtue, or belief that you had to actually get it going? Because you spotted something, you saw something that for the most part, the majority didn't see. Or maybe the majority didn't have the courage to actually change. So again, what value, virtue, belief do you think got you going?
Well, I mean, value, virtue. I guess I wanted to do something, you know what I mean, more. I wanted to put Cebu in the map for quality beer. It was just my outlet of doing it, you know. I don't know, that's a good question. I asked myself that quite a bit. But let's go, Rhett has an answer.
I think part of starting companies is not thinking too much about why it won't work. I mean, that's not to be like stupid about it. Like obviously you think about things that won't work, but most people get overpowered by all the reasons it won't work. Whereas I think the advantage of doing like an MVP or like starting in a smaller scale, whether it's one restaurant, you don't start thinking like probably, hey, I'm going to have 100 restaurants. You would start with, hey, can I make one restaurant work? So you kind of reduce the problem set to smaller. Then rather than thinking about why it won't work, just start doing the work that contributes. And then normally what happens, I think, along the way is you start to realize the things that you were thinking would be important are not. There's other problems. And then you deal with them along the way. Whereas I think if you think too much about, you know, the reasons that it won't work, then that would be like a reason to not start. So I think the biggest challenge, I think the biggest thing is just start. Just start doing it.
No, for sure. Because, I mean, really, anyone who's really passionate about something is going to be very scared about releasing whatever they want to do. And just sometimes you just have to just do it, you know? And again, like, yeah, exactly, you know? Start with the MVP, something that's, you know what I mean, low risk, low reward, and then just completely alter it. Just know that there's a way, you know? There's a good idea starts from a bad one, no?
Yeah, like I think with Rise, for example, if I was thinking, hey, I need to start a national telco, it would be overwhelming, both from the risk, the amount of capital required, everything, whereas we just started in one building. So it's kind of a small risk, you know? And then I think probably the same with coffee shops, restaurants. if you're thinking about having 100 restaurants before you even have one, you're probably thinking into Hollywood problems, like maybe reduce the problem set to a smallest version, maybe?
Yeah, well, Warren, the way I look at it, I think the most important component is your mindset. You know, think about it. It's everything starts in your mind. So if your mindset is that of a growth-minded person against a fixed-minded person, then you're always open to a lot of ideas. Let me tell you, you know, the ideas come from my children. I'm not a generator of ideas. I probably am able to convert ideas into steps on how to convert them. But what has happened over the years is that I really made it a point that if they bring up something to me, regardless of how wild that idea is, I never shut it down. You know, once you start shutting down people who bring up ideas with you, they will no longer bring ideas again, because they will have that traumatic experience. So in my particular case, and I think this is so important even for parents when you deal with your children, is that just be open to ideas and just explore the possibilities of these ideas, where they will go to or how they will evolve over time. Because my thinking is that if these ideas are not really workable, they will just show themselves over time that they're not workable, as long as you ask the right questions. But what happens if the idea is good? Then if you shut it down at the very start, the minute it's brought up, then it's gone. And that is really what has happened in our case. So if they bring up an idea, I always say, okay, if Randy brings up an idea, I said, Ran, okay, let's talk about this. Let's explore. Let's find out what we can do. So it's always trying to see if we can do something, not that we cannot do it. And over time, it gets developed and it's get converted into a venture. And that has happened. So to me, that's a very important component to how we got to where we are today. We started from zero, from nothing, from scratch. And we still have a lot of things to do, a lot of ideas are brought up. And again, I keep an open mind.
Thank you.
So I'll add to that. You brought your family here, huh?
Yeah, I brought a cheering squad. Guys, thank you for clapping.
I should have brought my family. But we're friends, so you can clap also. So entrepreneurship is actually defined as like jumping off a plane and assembling your parachute as you go down. So there is, it's like when you get into it, you're actually fixing a lot of things. So just to follow up on what Rhett said, an entrepreneur's mindset has a growth mindset compared to a scarcity mindset. So you feel like growth mindset is like, it will happen, I can do it, it will happen, right? So just in my case, probably I jumped off the plane at 70% sure. There's nothing 100% sure. At 70%, and when I dove into that, my first 3 months was actually not what I expected to happen, but I kept fixing it, and I think the one thing that really got me over the hump is I like what I do, I like what I was doing, or I like what I was into. So it starts with something that you really like to do. Otherwise, if you have no interest in it, and your love or passion is not into it, and probably after, if you get exhausted, you stop, right? So as an entrepreneur, I'm always asked, what business do I get into? The first thing is, you got to get into something that you like. Right? So the next thing is, after you dive into it, like before you dive into it, at least 70%, that 70% is composed of scanning and sensing what's going on. So in my case, coffee, I like coffee. So when I travel abroad, I saw the coffee business starting to build up, and people are embracing the lifestyle. But in the Philippines, it wasn't the case. But I was sure that probably in 2 or 3 years' time, Philippines will catch up. So I was probably too early, and I spent a lot of money on educating the market. But that's a skill that entrepreneurs should have: scan and sense what's going to happen in the near future.
Maybe the only thing you're 100% sure of is that you need to make a parachute.
So, again, it's very, very challenging. So I wanted to ask you guys also, what's your relationship or your philosophy in asking for help? Because probably when you all started, maybe as an solo, pretty much solo, right? So, and then also in the Philippine setting, asking for help is not the most comfortable thing to do. So I wanted to understand your philosophy towards that, towards seeking help.
Well, yeah, I mean, I came from, I have a learning disability. I've always asked, I grew up asking for help. So this is second nature to me. And I do see how people find it, intimidating. But you should always ask for help. Everyone's willing to give it. I mean, I've been asking it for the longest time, and people are just jumping like, oh, thank God, someone's asking me for help. So ask for it. That's my philosophy.
Nice, very clear, very straight to the point.
I mean, if people ask me for help, I help them. It's normal. I think also if you're too afraid to talk to someone, just go to YouTube and ask for help. You'd be surprised what you can learn to do on YouTube. Like it's actually like there's a video for everything these days. And I didn't know how to build an ISP. And I spent at least maybe 80 hours on YouTube watching interviews and, just trying to figure it out. So I guess if you're a bit interested in a topic, maybe to your point earlier, you got to really you got to care about the problem you're working on to spend the time on it. It's not enough to be like, I just want to make money or something. You got to care about the problem. So if you care enough about a problem, you'll spend your free time reading about it, YouTube, whatever. And then if you're comfortable enough, just ask people, or go to like industry events or conferences and just seek out the people you want to ask. So for me, I would go to like telecom conferences, just go to the speakers, ask them questions. It's like free advice from people that if you would try to get them to give you the advice in more of a contracting or consulting basis would be really expensive. So yeah, just interview people for jobs. That's a great source of advice, free advice potentially. Yeah.
So, or, if I'm in the room where I'm the best in that room, then I'm in the wrong room. So that's my philosophy, right? So I always like to surround myself with people better than me.
Bunny's here, so you're comfortable.
I feel like you guys are better than me because I can always learn something from somebody, right? So even if these guys are much younger than us, we probably know 95% of what they know, but there's 5% to learn, right? So, and that's the spirit that probably should be inculcated in every entrepreneur, the ability to want to learn more. Because if I look at some entrepreneurs, I do study, look at different cases, and most of the time when an entrepreneur starts to stop learning, it's more like, oh, I know everything. Oh, I know my business. So I was like an Endeavor entrepreneur. Johanna was with Endeavor at the time, and I was like questioned by 6 people in a panel who had no interest in my business and questions that I've never heard before. So why do I subject myself to that, right? So when I was asked those questions, it opened up my mind. Oh, there's so many things in my business that are blind spots for me. So in my first try as an entrepreneur, I actually was not accepted. And I went back, I was asked to go back, and I went to Madrid for another panel interview. And the second time I made it because I now saw some blind spots that they asked me the first time and made my business a better business and more solid foundation of business. So That's one thing actually wish I had when I was young and when I started, was to have a mentor, right? We didn't have that during our time. But this time it's everybody. There's a lot of mentors willing to mentor. In my organization's endeavor and entrepreneur, we do mentor a lot of entrepreneurs. So, but we still learn. That spirit of learning should always be there.
Yeah, well, in my particular case, when I was younger, I came across a statement that struck me. And the statement was something like this: leaders are readers. Leaders are readers. So I made it a point to just devour as many books that I could get my hands on at that particular point, like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, like Norman Vincent Peale, The Magic of Thinking, The Power of Positive Thinking, The Magic of Thinking Big, Peter Drucker, The Effective Executive, and then later on, Jim Collins, Good to Great, Great by Choice. So I learned a lot from reading books, because I had inferiority complex growing up, so I had to develop myself into something that would gain confidence over the years. So I still do, I still read, and I'm just a little bit disappointed that not enough people right now read, because we can learn a lot from the people who came before us. So that's what I've been doing. And also, when there's a problem that presents itself in our organization, the first thing I do is gather people around and sit down, and I don't open my mouth by giving a solution. I always ask, okay guys, this is our situation. What are your thoughts? What do you suggest? And then I listen, get at all the ideas that we could gather. Just to give you an example, like Cheryl's here, she started a barbecue business where House of Lechon is situated today. And then at that particular point, I saw that it would not sell, it would not work. So I gathered my kids together, and I said, guys, you know, we've started to build this restaurant. It's like halfway through. I don't think it will work. I just passed it to them. Do you have any ideas? Then I remember Randy said, Daddy, why don't we put up Rico's Lechon at that particular point? I said, Rico's Lechon. Okay, so what I did, I contacted Rico right that minute. I had coffee with him. I showed him the spot, and we became partners. It's just that it did not work out pretty well. But that was the birth of House of Lechon, which we had to take on ourselves. So my point is, if you meet your people, your executives, your family, and then you tell them what to do, it's not going to work, guys. You need to ask the right questions. They say that it's easier to give answers, to give an answer, but it's more challenging, it's more difficult to ask the right questions. And when you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. So that's how I really developed myself, and I still do that even today.
You mentioned Jim Collins, Good to Great. So, grabe, Bauhinia. Other
This is
guests,
so unfair.
please take notes. Please bring your family next time so that people are clapping for you. This is now a requirement for all our panelists. So on that note,
You were saying Jim Collins?
yeah, Good to Great. There's a chapter there that talks about getting the right people on the bus. And of course, trusting these people, right? Allowing them, enabling them to, think of the ideas, think of the solutions, asking the right questions. So what's your approach in building, in getting the right team? Because of course, we all understand if you're a startup, you're growing, each hire is a critical hire, right? So what's your approach to that?
Can I add just to the
Sure.
previous question? I have a friend, his dad, my friend owns Mega Sardines, right? One of the biggest sardines company in the Philippines. And they had very humble beginnings. But that company, and I think it's common knowledge, it's on the internet, started to take really big turns and became a mega business only after his father, at age 65, went to Harvard to attend OPM. It's a 3-year course for owners, presidents course. And at age 65 was the oldest in that batch. And that opened his mind and he learned so many things, and then came back home and professionalize a very old business. I mean, that's what I meant by continuous learning. There's a saying, the day that you stop growing is the day you start dying. I'll add to that. The day you stop being humble is the day you start dying. Because it's humility that says, I'm not good enough. I need to learn more, and I need to learn from Marco, from you guys. So I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs say, I've been there, done that. I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to attend. I'm not going to go. And that's when growth stops, right? So I just want to add that.
Yeah, thank you. 65 and actually went back to school. Man, I was like, 10 when I decided I didn't want school. So interesting, yeah. So yeah, going back to that, getting the right people on the bus, hiring a team. What's your, again, approach or philosophy to that as well? Because again, that's a form of help, right? You know, building a team, relying on them. Of course, there are day-to-day operations and other functions in the business that may not be the best use of your time and your resource, right? So you start building a team. And going back, if you're a startup, or even now, like, hires are always critical. The cost or the impact of a bad hire or a wrong hire is beyond monetary financial impact, right? So what's your discipline towards, bringing the right people on board?
Okay, well, first of all, you cannot bring in the right people on board unless you're willing to get the wrong people off the bus. That's what Jim Collins says. So this is a very challenging and a highly emotional act when you had to let someone go, especially if that person, of course, has invested in your company, you invested time with him, but it is something that you have to do if you want to build a strong organization. If I were to look back now, I would probably have wanted to spend more time in selecting the people we bring on board, because you cannot grow, you cannot expand, and I'm sure you agree with this, Steve, Rhett, and Marken, unless you have the right people on board, because you cannot do everything yourself, no matter how talented you are, no matter how much time you have, no matter how much energy you have to learn how to delegate. And delegating is not easy. It's trusting people, it's trusting them to do what you want them to do, and giving them the opportunity to do it, even if you're not there, but at the same time, knowing what's going on. And it is so important, and I want to just quote what Jim Collins said in his book, Good to Great: put the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. So even if you have the right people on board, but if they're in the wrong seats, you're not going to work. So it's a challenging situation, and it's a continuous process, and it will always be a challenge on getting these people on board. But once you have that, take good care of them, because they're really very, very difficult to find.
I grew up with that analogy my whole life. My dad was in HR, and he'd always tell me about the bus. But it's true. I mean, you can have a great person, and when you're looking at CVs, you're always like attracted to, like, okay, what grades do they have, and you know what I mean, right? But I think my approach to hiring was more on knowing what I was bad at, right? And then filling in those gaps. And actually, Rhett and I had a couple of beers one night, and we were talking about it.
So what had been your experience, Marken, in hiring people? Pretty good, or still needs a lot of improvement?
I think I need a lot of improvement, right? I feel like I've scored the jackpot with my people. I'm very happy with them. Actually, some of the people who work for me a lot older than me also have mentored. You know what I mean? I have my accountant, and she's doing multiple jobs with government relations and all that stuff, telling me to relax. But I feel like I have a really good team. They help me with what I'm weak at. You know what I mean? But again, it's still going to be a long path. There's so many things you should look for. Our company has only been three years running, and none of the people who initially started the business with me are with me right now. So it's constantly evolving. No, and I hope to get there one day, and I know it's not going to be soon. So appreciate the process.
So when I talk to most entrepreneurs and ask, what's your major problem in your business? 100% the answer would always involve people. So at a certain point, all business is a people business. And so that's why you need to work on your people. And hiring the right people is the most challenging task of any CEO. Right? At every stage, you'll have different people problems. So when I started up, the first hire I had, outside of the barista, I had 4 baristas that I trained myself, but outside of the barista was a bookkeeper. And I think that's something that most entrepreneurs don't value, is that keep the books in place from day one, so you'll know whether you're profitable or not, right? So that was my first hire. So at a certain stage, we need to add more managers, and then now we become professional company. So when I was looking for my COO in 2016, we took around 6 months process looking for one.
How many people did you have to talk to?
We shortlisted to 3. And when we were looking at different people, there were 2, down to 2, and one was like, we felt, I don't think this person's gonna roll up his sleeves and really go down and get dirty at work, right? So probably he's very good in visioning, strategies, and say, oh, this is what you do, hire his team and execute. But the other one had very good experience in operations, 14 years in McDonald's, 14 years in Super Bowl, and then probably 2 years in Paul Bakery and TWG. Probably not as visionary or strategic, but at that particular time, she was what we needed. And now she's developed to be very, very all around. And I'm very happy about her. And so she's helping me take on the company to the next level. So I am more of a visionary, of a strategic person, more analytical. If I checked my Clifton Strength Finder, those are my 5 top strengths. I needed somebody who's very high in activation, somebody who can activate, or an activator, and she is an activator, right? So you combine, so we would look for complementary skills in our company. So the other thing is, when we encountered between 2 equally qualified candidates, one very good in skills, the other one not so good, but probably more on culture fit. So are we looking for culture fit, or are we looking for skill set? At one point, we will encounter that challenge. Sometimes we'll go for skill set, but sometimes depends on the position. But most of the time, we will go for culture fit. Somebody who believes in what we do, somebody who believes in our vision, we believe who can contribute to our vision, and has the same values as us. So value-driven company, purpose-driven company, that's who we are.
Yeah, I agree with that last statement actually a lot. For me, I think people, like when you're trying to attract really talented people, they buy into why you're doing something, not what you're doing. So I think if you have a good company mission, like a good purpose, like it's genuinely useful or genuinely helping people, or you actually do care about your people, and the problem you're trying to solve is important, then I found that because I've started maybe 6 different companies. Some of my early companies were more just less important, I think, than what we're doing in the Philippines. And I could only get like a certain talent pool. Now that we're doing something I think that is needed, or like tech people identify with, then I've been able to pull more talented people. So for one thing, I think if you've got a really good company mission, then you can attract really high talent. The other thing is don't be afraid to ask people. So I've gone on LinkedIn, and I'll reach out to people that I think I could never hire this person. They would never want to move to the Philippines to work here. But I won't limit myself to Philippines only. I just approach people globally. And I've managed to pull a few people in to the country that are very talented, and they want to work on a problem with more meaning. So I'll challenge them. I kind of provoke them and say, hey, you're working at this big telco in Europe, but like it works. Like there's nothing, why work there? Why waste your time? And so like sometimes I guess, needle people, and eventually, people want to do something meaningful, so that sometimes brings people. I think to your point earlier, Marken, I think, hiring people that, being humble about your weaknesses, and then hiring the people that can be good at the things you're not good at, that's important. And then also putting like real value on your time. So like one thought exercise you can do is, I guess, attach a value to your time. Let's say, whatever it is, $100 an hour or $1,000, or put a high value if possible. And then that also helps you to know when you should hire someone. So if you keep track of your time, you might be like, hey, I'm spending several hours a day doing, this, or a week doing this. It would be worth me hiring someone now. And probably my only other feedback would be that I guess I've gone from being employee number one to now I've got about maybe 350 people in my group. And as the company went from, say, 0 to 50, or 50 to 150, 150 to 300, at the different stages, some people were the right people on the bus, but as we got at different scale, some people needed to get off the bus and let other people on the bus. So I guess it was like a different scale or different stages. Maybe people also that might have been right at the beginning, if they're not continually learning and growing with your sizing, that can also, you need to change based on the stage or the size or amount of people. Yeah, sometimes.
So people, a lot of entrepreneurs look at hiring high-skilled people as an expense, right? I was even at that point where, shucks, I need really good top managers, but they're too expensive. My business couldn't afford it. So it's a chicken or egg. Once I get to that level, I'll hire the right people and pay them well, but I need to get to that level, right? But because now people look at employees or talents as an expense. So just a little bit of a mindset shift from expense to investment. So now talents are investment who can take me to the next level. So if I have to spend $500,000 a month for an executive, probably I couldn't afford it, or if I can, but if you want to get to 1B, 2B, 3B business, and it will take a 500, 1 million peso a month person salary to take you there, then that's a good investment, right? So that's how we look. And when we hire, if you say we want to go to 300 stores, because currently we're around 150. So when we hire, I said, okay, instead of saying, how much can we afford, right? Probably just get what you deserve, but to say, what do we need to get to 300? We need this person. So one of my principals say, then hire somebody who's done 500 stores, right? Look at the market industry. Who has done 500 stores? 300 will be easy for her. But how much does she cost? 1 million. Do your numbers and say, that's an investment. So talent is an investment, it's not an expense.
Yeah, I'd like to, Warren, excuse me. I'd like to support what you're saying, Steve, because, when you're in business, it's always a difficult situation to hire someone and pay that person a very high salary. But when you get somebody who is really qualified, you pay him a high salary, you've got to make sure that he delivers. it is so important. So, but unless you have this person, there's no way also you can achieve your objectives or achieve your dreams. So it's really like, which comes first, the cart or the horse? But I think the entrepreneurial mind has to work in such a way that, I invest on this person, I make sure that he does it. But of course, you've got to make sure that you hire the right person. That's the key.
Yeah. Can I just follow that? So one of the things, okay, a lot of people come to Philippines, they're like, for outsourcing, and they're like, oh, it's cheaper here, that's why I'm putting the jobs here. And I think that is kind of a mistake in terms of there's like global talent. A lot of the talented Filipinos migrate to other countries, right? Because they're seeking higher pay and opportunity elsewhere. And in part, yeah, if your opportunity is big enough, yeah, it's to what you said, which is how do we achieve the objective? Who's the best people to achieve the objective? And I think paying, in some cases, way different prices from, what a market would say or what a hierarchy would say inside a company, it makes sense. Yeah, it's an investment. Yeah, so for me, I've really worked hard to convince people from some of the best performing telecom companies in other countries to join. And so, yeah, trying to hire people out of companies that are winning. One of my experiences was if I hire people and they're always complaining, saying, oh, the other company didn't work, and they're blaming the company, versus if I hire someone out of a winning company, normally the guy from the winning company, they just come with the best practices, with, so I think, and being willing to spend the money on it if you can, depending on the stage of the company, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Rhett, earlier we touched on meritocracy, right? Having people, it's not really, in a sense, level dependent on what they can contribute or what they could say even, right, in your company. So how important is it for you guys to have that kind of, in a sense, free-flowing dynamic, right? Again, it's not, because so given my background, like I do executive search for the conglomerates here in the Philippines, and there's this, I guess, legacy dynamic or culture wherein seniority matters, right? That sometimes it's so bad, but they say that, hey, it's above your pay grade, it's above your level, so you're not supposed to really engage or speak. But of course, with the millennials, with the Gen Z, and options, education is just really more open now, and a lot of people know a lot of things, and it's not, hey, I'm a fan of YouTube University also. So again, what's the role of, let's say, having that kind of meritocracy now in your company, Rhett?
At the risk of being a foreigner, commenting on Philippines culture? Or what are you asking me to do here?
Well, we've got beer, so I think it's fine.
I mean, in a broad sense, I guess age normally is more important here than maybe Australia. Also, like direct confrontation, like I ran a company in Sydney before. The people working for me frequently called me an idiot. It was normal. I was pretty much abused at work all the time.
So that's why you're here.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Getting that like direct feedback's quite helpful if it's coming from the right place. Not getting called an idiot necessarily, but when someone disagrees with you, them feeling comfortable to disagree with you. I'd say, at least in our company, that's still not. I think I'm fighting a culture war in terms of, the people would be more deferential if they're considering the other person higher up. In an Australian environment, normally we're a bit more flat, in terms of power dynamics. And then I think that creates more of a feedback loop, I guess, that can solve problems faster and also arrive at better outcomes. So yeah, I'd say that's an ongoing challenge for me, getting genuine feedback. Sometimes I probably shouldn't say, sometimes I would suggest a really stupid idea and then see how the person responds. And then they'll be like, yes, sir, we should do that. Okay. So, Or like I set up the programming teams more like a basketball team, and then seeing you can pick someone to be on your programming team, and then I would see who gets picked last. That was always kind of easier than somebody saying who's not a good programmer. So I don't know. I guess it's challenging environment, but I do think that if people feel comfortable to give criticism to their seniors, that's a healthy thing. It's definitely better. And then confrontation, and also if somebody's younger than someone, it's okay that they get promoted above someone else if they're better at it, like meritocracy, kind of what you're saying. If you want to have a stronger company, I think, yeah.
May I add something to that one? I think one of the most important functions of a CEO or the founder of the company is set the culture of the organization. You know, a culture is very difficult to get your hands on. It's really like, it's hard to define, but it's sort of how we do things around here. You know, you can feel the culture, and I believe that it's one of the important areas that a CEO or an owner should do. In our organization, one of the things we really do is to establish an atmosphere of candor, C-A-N-D-O-R. Candor, it's like openness. In fact, it is openness at the expense even of a little bit of a difficulty of communication. So everybody can open to anybody, talk to the person that you need to, but it is a very challenging ambience to involve in the organization, because it's really like, you know, be open. Anybody can just talk to me, and I would consider and I would listen, and I tell them this is a safe place. So culture is very important, and you can only do that, Rhett, I guess, if the culture is one that's open, one that is available to people to communicate with each other from top to bottom. So my door is always open, and I'm sure it's the same with my children and the family. So, but that has to be established at the very start. It is very difficult to change culture once you have it. Like you bring in a new guy, change the culture, it has to start at the top. And that's what we're trying to do. It's like a family setting, but with certain rules and parameters and objectives and certain targets. But candor is a very important part of our culture.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think we're extending already. So I want to ask, I guess, one last question. It's not really a question, but more of maybe something that you guys could pass on when it comes to starting a business or growing your business. Because it's interesting, because I was doing my research. So obviously we have the veterans, right, in the business. And it took a while. Like in this day and age, Rhett, you're good here. Yeah. So in this day and age, it's all about, Ron touched on it, blitz scaling, right, growing rapidly. But for your groups, right, there's this kind of, patience, steadiness when it comes to growing. For you, Rhett, it's been a while. I mean, of course, you had your PR launch fairly recently, right, with Rise, but it's been what, how many years now?
I'm a 20-year overnight success. No, Rise is I think 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah, so there. And then, of course, Market, I read in an article that you're not really that keen to bring out your beer out of Cebu. So, I mean, from a growth perspective, right, parang it's kind of parang counterintuitive to the times where everyone just wants to grow. So, what's your, I guess, advice, or what's your take on how to approach growth?
Well, I didn't want to leave it out of Cebu because of a quality control issue, right? I wanted to be close to my customers. I wanted to be able to personally go to these accounts, answer complaints, and figure out what we're doing, and we're doing it slowly. Right now, Abby and I have been talking about off-grid accounts, right? Creating draft system maintenance virtually, right? And then we're going to have a couple of key accounts in very remote areas, and we're slowly going to do it. Right now, we just have a couple of pieces of lab equipment, then we've been able to bring our shelf life from 1 month to 2 years. Right now we have one that's for sure 1 year. So we've opened this plant. I mean, it's only been running for a year. So, but based on our analysis, we're able to do it for 2 years. Instead of having cold storage, we're able to have dry storage. So one, I wanted to really establish our brand as a Cebuana brand. No, this is my home. This is where I want it to be, and I want everyone to know that. No, and then two, it's going to be quality control, right? We want to make sure that all our beers are coming out good, and in the quality I intended it to be. No, one advice is to grow slow. Don't take your time. Don't chew more than you can digest. No. Also, feedback. Get feedback. Now, Rhett was talking about before was people have a hard time telling you, right? I'm not talking about the feedback that you ask your mom. Mom, is it good? Of course, son. Right? You know what I mean? Find a frank person, right? I don't know. Go to what do you call it? Get a French to tell you what it is. And by the way, the closer you get to Paris, the better your answer is gonna be. Or we can invite Rhett Jones for a couple of drinks. After 3 shots of tequila, he'll give you feedback even if you don't want it. But listen to the feedback. Get it. Understand what it is, right? Don't grow too fast because you lack such a huge potential in understanding your business. All right?
Rhett?
Yeah, I think the pressure to make something bigger, I guess, you have to ask yourself whether it's necessary. It probably depends on a few things. If you take on money from investors, like especially say like venture capitalists, they will have much higher expectations of how big you're going to get. That kind of makes sense, I guess, if you're just building a software platform that can get customers around the world. But yeah, if you're working on something that has more bricks and mortar or physical components or infrastructure, it's not really practical to grow at that speed. So I guess depends on the type of business you're doing, affects your ability to grow quickly. I guess people use the word blitzscaling before, but I mean, if you're trying to capture market share, like revenue, and then you're okay to take some cost inefficiency to get there and investors are willing to pay for it, then sure. But yeah, I think if you push your growth rate too hard, you might break everybody in the process as well. There's nothing wrong with a small business, a lifestyle business for people. There's also nothing wrong with a big business if you can do it, but a big business will come with a lot more pressure. To be honest, it was a lot easier for me when I had, say, 10 people working with me than now, in terms of the pressure on me. So even though you would say, oh, it's more successful, it's definitely harder at a certain scale, I think. Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that question, though. I feel like we're growing fast for what we're doing, but I wouldn't recommend it for everyone.
Yeah. Steve, I mean, I came across your vision, which is to be a global Filipino coffee. Sorry, I'm not saying it well, right? Maybe you want to share your vision so you could like get it better. And then, of course, how do you do that? Because you're gonna go outside now the Philippines, right? Wherein there are like massive global coffee players. So
Yeah, so our vision is to be a global Filipino coffee company.
thank you.
And how do we do that? Our mission is to create more platforms, build more stores so we can share the Filipino coffee experience. So when you're talking about growth, what's my perspective of growth? Most of businessmen or entrepreneurs look at growth in terms of numbers, right? Revenue, profit, number of stores, number of locations, how many sold. I mean, those are numbers that we can measure growth. But in my perspective, that we don't have to be the biggest, we just have to be the best at what we're doing. And highlighting Philippine coffee, that's where we want to be the best. And we've been doing that for the last 28 years, but specifically highlighting Philippine coffee in the last 15 years. And when we started highlighting Philippine coffee, we were looked down at that particular time. It was a very difficult decision. We had debates within my management team. Should we now really highlight Philippine coffee? Should we declare to be homegrown? And that was a pivotal change, right? That was a pivot change where we said, let's claim that and let's claim that and let's own that. And lo and behold, if I go to different independent coffee shops right now, they highlight Philippine coffee from a certain Philippine coffee origin. And that's fulfillment for me. Right? That's where I find growth. That's what growth is for me. Seeing that what we did, what we seeded, was a good cause. Highlighting Philippine coffee, helping the Filipino coffee farmers, improve lives in the community. Right now, before in 2012, probably there was no export of Philippine coffee abroad. But just this year, I think one of the social enterprises we work with, Calzada, has started to ship more than 3 or 4 containers a year to the United States. So that's a big step. Very far from where we want to go, but every 1,000 miles journey starts with one step, right? So that's what growth is for me. I'm very happy to see that as we build stores and platforms in the Middle East, we bring Filipinos closer, we bring home closer to the Filipinos who live there. And by highlighting Philippine coffee in the Middle East, we exposed that market to say, hey, what's this? Never heard about Philippine coffee. And when they try it, and you see a smile on their face, that means, wow, that's fulfillment for us. Because then we just made our mission very, very, very achievable, and our vision, something we can already see happening. So that's how we measure growth, right? We just built 2 communities, one in Benguet and another one in Bukidnon or Cotabato with social enterprises. Just helping the farmers earn more by cutting their costs. Not necessarily on the top, but on the bottom. So their costs has gone down. They get more take home. We not only work with coffee communities, we also work with tea communities in Laguna. And I'd like to share this story where that community we started with was a community of relocated nanays from Manila, victims of Ondoy. They were brought to Laguna. Fine, they have some place to live, but they did not have work, right? So most of them go back to Manila and become informal settlers again. So the cycle of poverty is never going to end if that's not cut, right? So the moment the social enterprise started to work with us, and he started building communities, and we started procuring from them, just how powerful businesses are, not doing anything much more than just procuring from them has helped that community to prosper. From 7 nanays, they now have 28 nanays, from 1 day work a week, earning probably 2,000 a month, now earning, let's just say, their kids eat 3 times a day. We brought them to Manila, treated them to fried chicken, and they're so happy. When they see, they don't know me, but they know they get introduced on this boat, and they come rushing and thanking and say, now we eat Jollibee, they eat chicken, right? So that's what is growth for me. That's what that I find so much fulfillment. And if there are monetary rewards and financial rewards, that's a reward, right? We get incentivized by it, but it's not the core thing why we do things.
It's wonderful. Wonderful, Steve.
There you go. Now you have that.
Now, well, I have just a very simple take on growth. And this is, of course, situational. Unless your company is growing, it's retrogressing. So you have to grow to survive and to prosper. How come you're all quiet?
That's a big word. There you go.
Maybe just one follow-up comment to Steve's point. I think all of us are like probably more oriented around an outcome, which, you know, maybe high quality beer from Cebu, coffee abroad, and livelihoods for people. I'm trying to make internet better, right? So when I started, you know, Philippines was 176 in the world. At this point, Philippines is 40th for fixed line speeds over 8 years. It's not just me, but it's a big problem set. And like a lot of the products we chose to build were not the things that would have grown our revenue the most. Even working on this would be a slower way for us to make money versus doing software in other countries, to be honest. So I think if you orient around solving a challenge or a problem or something that you want to improve, the financial part has to add up. Like you can't go broke in the process, but like, or you kind of, you know, grow to a certain size without money, obviously, in the mix as one of the things. But the main thing is to have a, you know, a solid objective, which is where money is the trailing metric due to what you do, not the purpose. So yeah, when we frame like our objectives in the company, it's normally around, it's not specifically financial objectives. Normally it's around like coverage or product quality or things like that. And then money comes as a result, I think, of that.